How's it going, everybody? It's the new Sam coming at you again today with a toy review. Now this one's a little different from what I normally do, as frequently I tend to stick to my two main loves in toy collecting: Transformers and Kamen Rider. But unbeknownst to some, one of the things that I collect sort of on the side, I wouldn't call it like a dedicated collection or anything, I don't even really follow any of the fiction, G.I. Joes. And so recently in town, because basically in a small town like this you have to take what you can get, we actually happened to get in the entire first wave of G.I. Joe Retaliation regular figures. So without further ado, let's take a look at G.I. Joe Retaliation Wave 1. G.I. Joe! We begin with a look at the star of the film, Roadblock, as portrayed by Dwayne Johnson of wrestling fame. And the figure itself is kind of cool, featuring some big muscle detail, decent paint all around. Pretty tall for a standard G.I. Joe figure. The face is a moderately okay approximation of Dwayne Johnson. I mean, you can tell what they were going for. Where this figure suffers the most is his hand. Very, very clearly designed for his weapon gimmick. And what weapon is that, you ask? Well, in order to outfit him with his weapons, first, we have to clip on his giant cybernetic shoulder pad. Now he comes with two weapons, the first of which is this thing. Now you might be asking yourself, but Sam, what the hell is that thing? Well, to be honest, I don't know. This little bit slides up. I don't know if it's an extra weapon, a targeting sensor, or what it's actually used for, but it pops up. The weapon, near as I can tell, can be one of two things. Either A, you could totally deck it out as a shoulder-mounted laser cannon thing, or B, you can take the front of this thing here, slide it into the back there, to pop out a blade. Because apparently, according to his on-package bio, Roadblock here is a ninja. I wish I were making that up. He's a ninja. In fact, it seems that just about everyone in this second G.I. Joe movie is a ninja in some way, shape, or form. As such, I've begun calling the movie G.I. Joe 2, Everyone's a Ninja. The second part of his weapon fits into the top portion of his little hand-molded key thing, and it is this, which not terribly well fires a missile, as evidenced, by that. It's got these little fold-out panels here, and if you plug this in there, it pops up these two shields, though not terribly well. At full extension they sit about there. Totally anime-esque giant laser cannon. And for added fun, you can take this piece, plug it into the back for an even bigger gun, mount it onto his shoulder, if his shoulder pad will stay on, plug his hand key thing into it, and have him wield his giant weapon on his shoulder. It's pretty cool, I guess. Now, I would have less of a gripe with this about this figure if they had featured a second hand. I mean, numerous figures in this wave, okay, so two of them, feature extra body parts that you can swap out. An extra hand to swap out on Roadblock would have been great. The other thing is, something that has been used a lot in more recent G.I. Joe figures, but is decidedly not present here, is one point of articulation that I think is it's kind of needed for the way these figures are built. See, his boot is all one solid piece. All right, he has no swivel in his leg at all, and plus he's only got a single knee joint. Whereas if you take a figure from even the first movie line, like Destro here, he's got tilting ankle and double jointed knee, which granted doesn't allow for a whole lot more posing, but still, it's a double jointed knee, whereas this guy's got a single joint. As for that, other than that, everything else is the same. I mean, you've got your articulation all over, ball jointed head, ball jointed at the waist. You know, you can get some good pelvic thrusting action going, just in case you feel like doing that. I don't know. I was moving my figure around one day, and one of my friends looked, and he's like, "Man, did you just make him thrust his pelvis?" I was like, "No, but now that you mention it..." And so every once in a while I do it to disturb him. It's great. Anyway, so that's Roadblock. Moving along. Next up, we have Mr. Allegedly Dead in 5 Minutes. Duke, the star of the last movie. Duke is wearing some sort of green bodysuit that makes him look like he's either going into space or becoming a superhero or something. Not quite sure what to make of it. I don't know if anybody's going to wear something like that in the movie or not, but whatever. His head sculpt, decidedly herpaderp. The paint is really bland on him. I don't know. The figure just looks kind of off. He is also missing the ankle and extra knee articulation of more normal figures, but he features everything else. And his weapon, in our mass amount of gimmickry here, he features this, a drum-clipped grenade-launching type thing, which of course he can hold reasonably well. But then, we get this, which mounts on top of it. Because a normal-sized gun in a G.I. Joe movie line? Pfft, for shame. So, we now have this as a weapon. Now, since someone couldn't possibly hold this thing by themselves, we bring out yet another cybernetic shoulder pad, which clips onto Duke. Sort of. Like that. There we go. We can plug this in. Put his hand back on the gun. And now he can wield his giant cannon. Although not terribly well, as it's incredibly front heavy, and not a single one of these figures actually came with a stand. But this cannon is actually kind of cool for one thing. And that is, with this little ripcord, no, not that ripcord, we thread it through. Notice the bullet details across here, also kind of cool. And then, by pulling it, we launch all 4 missiles. It's kind of cool. So that's Herpaderp, I'm Dead Duke. Now on to the next hero of the movie franchise, and, you know, any other G.I. Joe anything ever. Because what would a movie about everyone being ninjas be without an actual ninja? Snake Eyes. Snake Eyes here is a little different in the fact that he actually features a reasonable amount of articulation. Well, more so than the other guys. Getting the double-jointed knee to allow for ninja poses, having the ankle articulation that I previously mentioned, and then adding some things. He has an ankle rocker to allow him to pose very wide-leggedly, which is very cool. Reminds me a lot of some of the Japanese figures that I collect. And he also features a wrist angling joint. Well, two of them really, but to allow for more intense ninja posing. For regular weaponry, because lo and behold, this figure actually comes with regular weaponry. He comes with this little blue machine pistol thing, which he can hold relatively well in his hand. And what would a ninja be without a sword? Snake Eyes is now ready to fuck somebody up, which is cool. On to his gimmick. His gimmick weapon thing, which is this. Now you might be asking yourself, what the fuck is that? This is some body armor. Which clips on just like this, plug it into his backpack hole, and then slide the straps on. With gliding wings that he can hold on to. I usually get him to hold on to them by way of removing them first, sticking his hand through, and then plugging them back in. And then the backpack itself features this, which is a crazy hook thing and a bunch of rope. And what you do with said bunch of rope is you clip your hook somewhere, and then he's supposed to, using the hook as an anchor, be able to zip line. Which, I mean, is kinda cool, you know? I mean, I always did love zip lines when I was a kid, and this stuff is like some seriously heavy-duty, thick rope. It's very awesome. And then, of course, what wing suit thing would be complete without the ability to launch the wingtips as missiles? So that's Snake Eyes. It's kind of cool. Moving on, we've got our last good guy of the bunch, the G.I. Joe Trooper, otherwise known as I Swear I'm Not Master Chief. The Joe Trooper features one gimmick and one gimmick alone, and that gimmick is he is the most heavily armed figure I think I've ever seen. He also features the double knee joint and the rocking ankle, which is strange because he's just a regular trooper and, you know, some of the more important characters didn't get them. But still, kind of cool. He features a head that swaps out, so if you want him to stop looking like Master Chief, you can swap it out for this one to make him Captain Buzzcut. And he features a whole slew of accessories, being, as I said, one of the most tooled up Joe figures I've ever seen. He's got a desert cape, a pump action, probably grenade launcher, and then, for pegging in right down there, he's got a dual knife sheath with two knives in it. The fun doesn't stop there. He's got this, a backpack full of gear, with a removable gas mask that you can put on him to make him look all cool. And then it's got a long rifle, machine gun with a pump action grenade launcher on the bottom, and then the backpack itself features 1, 2 revolvers and 1, 2 little 9mm, and finally a removable shovel, because you never know when you might need a shovel. The best thing that I found about this guy is the fact that even though he comes with a metric shit ton of accessories, you can actually equip everything he comes with to him all at once by way of his backpack. which also makes him decidedly very heavy, and unfortunately very back-heavy as well, which is why it's slightly disappointing that none of these guys come with any kind of stand. Still, very cool. Probably one of the most recommended figures of the entire set. Next up comes the bad guys, because who doesn't love bad guys? To start things off with the bad guys, we've got their leader, Cobra Commander. Rocking a decidedly more, Cobra Commander-ish look than he did in the previous movie. This figure features an all-around pretty decent sculpt, lacks a few points of articulation, just like some of the other figures. But all in all, he looks pretty cool. It would have been better, I think, if he had been wearing blue like the packaging for him showed, but still, not a major gripe. I really like his helmet. It's got a silver faceplate like it should. It's Cobra themed like it ought to be. I also really like his whole bandolier and utility belt. He's got this little bit of rope running down it, which is, just painted plastic, but it looks really cool. Also, I don't know if it's going to show up very well on my camera or not, but his armor plating along his arms is actually painted so that it's a different color of black than the actual black of his arms. Really, really cool. He's also got Cobra knee pads. For accessories, he comes with this little gun, which he can, of course, hold in his hand, or you can slot it into his holster. Comes with a larger machine gun. And finally, what would Cobra Commander be without a giant freaking Cobra staff? Yes, Cobra Commander here comes with a really, really freakishly oversized Cobra staff. And the best part about it is that the mouth opens. But the reason for that is, of course, because it is the trigger for its missile launching gimmick. Plug the missile into the mouth, and once at the camera, just because that's always the way I do it, boom! Still, though, it's big, it's cumbersome, it's kind of hard for him to hold, but it looks really awesome. I mean, you got the painted eyes, the nice metallic blue plastic. It is a pretty cool little Cobra staff. Comes in 2 pieces in the package, so, if you want him to just hold this thing and maybe use it like a bladed weapon, you could do that too. All in all, though, very cool. Moving along from the Commander, we've got Zartan. I was initially reluctant to get this figure, but he actually turned out to be kind of cool. He features a very difficult to capture light piping gimmick, which allows his eyes to glow. There we go, it's getting a little bit of it right there. There's a slot in the top of his hood to allow light to go through it. But overall, he's got a pretty decent sculpt to him. He's, again, missing some of the articulation, but, still, he's kind of awesome. Comes with a few accessories, like 2 sheaths with a couple of swords for his back, a pistol, very thick pistol, it's kind of cool. And also, I don't know if this is actually what it's for, but it appears to slot into his backpack like that. He also comes with a crossbow. These 2 pegs, I assume, are to allow it to peg into his back when he's not using the swords. And some extra bolts for the crossbow, none of which are removable, of course. They feature a hole that I think can be used to either plug them into his back, or if you want, you can plug them into the bottom of the crossbow, just in case he needs to draw a new one and fire it. Now, Zartan's always been the type that's able to change how he looks, so of course the figure replicates that by way of swappable heads. 3 in all, not counting the one he's already got on. So swapping out Zartan's regular head, you can put on this head. And the light piping area for it is very, very obvious. The light piping doesn't even work terribly well, due to the fact that his eyes are practically painted shut anyways. Anyway, I'm not entirely certain who this head is supposed to represent, or if it's supposed to represent anyone at all, as I don't know if it's the same with all Zartans, but mine didn't actually come with instructions, and the package only called out the next two heads. The next two heads, of course, being Storm Shadow. So he's totally disguised as Storm Shadow right now. You believe him, don't you? And the only one without a light piping gimmick, Snake Eyes. Which also warrants the use of said swords. Although why they made the figure able to disguise himself as the ninjas and not give him the articulation of the ninjas, it's anyone's guess, really. Still, for a figure I didn't want to get and thus had no expectations from whatsoever, Zartan is pretty cool. Although, I'm probably going to paint a black mask around his eyes. It's a Zartan thing to me. Moving on, while we're on the subject of people being ninjas, how about Storm Shadow? How about Storm Shadow? Featuring all the same articulation as Snake Eyes, including the bending wrist, ankle, and ankle rocker joints, as well as double jointed knees, Storm Shadow is a particularly cool looking figure. His face is a reasonable masked head sculpt with a decent amount of paint on it. It looks pretty cool. His whole design, just fairly awesome. Weapon count, decidedly small. He's got these to go on his back and can be removed from the little gray thing, so that he's got his long and short swords, which with the addition of his wrist bending joints allows for some pretty cool sword poses, I'm not gonna lie. Finally we get to Storm Shadow's gimmick, because everybody knew this was coming. Storm Shadow does have a gimmick, and the same as the previous ninja we looked at, Storm Shadow features a zipline gimmick. His zipline launcher, however, actually launches his zipline. It looks like a giant bow. You know, like you hold it there and you kind of pull it back and it fires or something. It looks like it's got, you know, the appropriate gearing to allow it to do that. Of course, it's all one solid piece, but still. These clips here, same as the one on Snake Eyes' backpack, are for the rope to go through. And the missile slash zipline is the same big hooky, claw-y thing. But like I said before, this one actually launches. And it launches, you know, fairly decently. Once the zip line is attached to anything, of course, you can plug this, or you can slide this rope into the little holder there. Makes Storm Shadow hold on to one of the handles to have him... Come on, hold on to it. Well, if you can make him hold on to one of the handles, there we go. Then you can send Storm Shadow on some manner of, you know, zip-lining adventure. Okay, not really, but anyway, they tried. The gimmick is there. It's attempted. Maybe his other hand would work better, but I'm trying to cut down on time. So, let's move along. Storm Shadow, pretty cool. Moving on. Because everybody's a ninja, why not a red ninja? Featuring the same articulation as the other ninjas. Ankle rocker, ankle joint, double jointed knees. However, he has one, you know, wrist that pivots that way, and one wrist that pivots that way. Which is kind of cool. Detail-wise, very nice. Got a good face paint thing going on here. He's got nice ninja boots. You know, all around. Looks pretty cool. He's got a nice sash going all the way across him, tied up down at the bottom, which is, of course, in actuality, where the whole thing pegs together. Overall, he looks very cool and very much, of course, like a ninja. Comes with two straight swords, which he can hold a little better than Storm Shadow can hold his. Right on. And of course, features yet again a zipline gimmick. This one, the launcher clips onto his arm. Sometimes well, sometimes not so much. There we go. So a zipline launcher on his arm, because that's totally ninja. Connect in our little zipline missile. Fire it off. It actually fires pretty decently too. Take that, Roadblock's gun. And of course, as previously, zipline can connect in here, and then you can zipline your ninja. Pretty cool. Moving on, last of the bunch. Cobra Trooper. Just regular ass Cobra Trooper. He's pretty cool. Features a few nice little accessories. For one, we've got a bucket helmet. Sort of a callback to the old Cobra Troopers and their bucket helmet. He's got this rather hefty weapon. Not even quite sure what to make of it. But it's pretty cool, looks kind of imposing. And of course, over in his holster here, got a little pistol you can stick in. Or if one were to so choose, drop that. Hold on to the pistol. And, you know, he holds it pretty reasonably. It's pretty cool. The packaging actually depicted him with another gun, but none of the ones I saw in package actually came with a third gun. So I'm not quite sure what to make of it there. All around, though, the design's pretty cool. There's a lot of blue involved because, well, he is a Cobra Trooper after all. But probably the coolest thing that this guy came with, this harness with the Cobra logo painted on it. And this harness is attached to, though not terribly well, as you can see these ropes are coming undone, but attached to a full-on legit Cobra parachute. It's pretty cool. So you can actually take this figure and, you know, retie his parachute straps. Give me a second here. Then you can ball him up like one of them old parachuting army men figures and toss him. And the parachute will, in fact, pop open and he will parachute to safety. It is a pretty cool feature and probably one of my favorite ones of this entire figure line. I got to admit, the whole concept of having a full parachuting G.I. Joe action figure, really awesome. I mean, we used to like make out of like plastic bags and stuff parachutes for our action figures back in the day. So when I first opened this one up, and you better believe I tried out the parachute, it brought back all kinds of waves of nostalgia like that. It was very cool. So oddly enough, like I said, between the Cobra Trooper and the Joe Trooper, they're probably my favorites out of this entire line. Just the generic grunt soldiers. And in fact, I may even go get a few more, maybe next payday or the payday after that, if there's still any left in the store. Because, you know, that's the best thing about these troop figures, is not only are they awesome, but you can also army build with them, you know. I mean, it's not like Cobra Commander's going to have a grand total of one Cobra Trooper at his side. No, he's going to have, you know, plenty, right? I could make an entire paratrooper army out of these guys. It would be awesome. So this concludes my look at G.I. Joe Retaliation Wave 1. All in all, like, as a whole, the wave comes pretty highly recommended because despite the fact that there's some hits, some misses, the figures themselves, like, especially, like I said, the troopers, are really friggin' solid, really cool, and any of the ninjas with their added articulation, also really cool. Plus, I mean, design-wise, Cobra Commander looks cool. Zartan's okay, Roadblock's okay, Duke's kind of ridiculous looking, but I mean, like I said, his you know, quad rocket launcher gimmick is pretty awesome too. So yeah, as a whole, the Wave comes recommended, but especially recommended are the Ninjas and the Troopers. And I personally am looking forward to when the movie comes out and the future waves of the figures, because I need me a Bruce Willis G.I. Joe, goddammit. So that's it for these things, and we'll see y'all next time.